Previously in the first part, Naomi Caldwell, once a humble maid, became the miracle in the lives of Elias and Liam Montgomery, the blind twin sons of billionaire Charles Montgomery III. Against all odds and the cold cruelty of their mother, Evangeline, Naomi brought the boys back from despair, their sight slowly returning under her care. What began as whispers of impossible healing turned into a storm that drew the eyes of the world. Courts, doctors, the press all demanded answers, but Naomi never claimed the miracle as her own. She only spoke of love, the force that carried the boys from darkness into light. Charles, humbled, embraced her as guardian to his children. The twins thrived. Evangeline, shamed and furious, abandoned her family. For a time, peace seemed to settle upon the Montgomery estate. But miracles come with shadows, and some doors once opened refused to close. The first spring after Evangeline's departure was golden, alive with new beginnings. The twins, now nearly 10, ran across the gardens each day, their laughter echoing through the estate. Their vision, though not perfect, was strong enough for them to marvel at the roses, the glimmer of sunlight on fountains, the colors of the world they had long been denied. Naomi lived with them not as servant but as family. She had her own suite of rooms, her place at the dinner table, her voice respected in decisions about the boys' future. For Charles, her presence was both a relief and a quiet torment. He was grateful, yes, but each time he watched the twins run to her instead of him, a pang of jealousy twisted in his chest. Still, for a season, life was good. Until the letter came. It arrived one rainy morning, sealed with a crest Naomi didn't recognize, but Charles did. When he broke the wax seal and read the words, his face darkened. "What is it?" Naomi asked, sensing the tension in his jaw. Charles folded the letter carefully, his voice clipped. "Nothing that concerns you." But Naomi wasn't convinced. She noticed how he tucked the paper into the inner pocket of his coat, how he immediately ordered a car into the city, how he left without explaining. That night he did not return. When Charles finally came back 2 days later, Naomi met him in the study. His eyes were red-rimmed, his face drawn. "Where were you?" she asked, her voice steady though her heart pounded. Charles poured himself a drink before answering. "There are matters you don't understand. Enemies, people who would use what happened here for their own gain." Naomi frowned. "Enemies? What does that have to do with the boys?" "Everything," Charles said bitterly. "You think the world will let this miracle rest? They want it, they want to own it, and they'll come for the source." Naomi's breath caught. "The source, you mean me?" Charles didn't answer, he didn't need to. That summer, the first sign of danger came. The twins had been playing near the lake at the edge of the estate when a black car rolled up just beyond the gates. 2 men in dark suits stepped out, watching silently as the boys laughed and ran. Naomi spotted them first. Her instincts screamed. She hurried the boys back toward the mansion, her arms protectively around their shoulders. When she glanced back, the car was gone. But the unease it left behind stayed. Whispers reached them soon after. Stories in the papers of wealthy families across the country seeking Naomi Caldwell, offering fortunes for her to come heal their children. Doctors and scientists sent endless letters, some begging, others demanding she participate in studies. And in the shadows, rumors spread of more sinister interests, groups who saw her not as a woman but as a commodity. Charles tightened security around the estate, hearing guards fortifying gates. Yet Naomi felt the walls closing in. "What if they take me away from Elias and Liam?" she asked one night, her voice trembling. "They won't," Charles said firmly. "I won't allow it." But in his eyes, Naomi saw doubt. Meanwhile, the twins began asking questions Naomi could not easily answer. "Why do people call you a miracle worker?" Elias asked one afternoon as they sat beneath the oak tree. Naomi hesitated. "Because they don't understand, and when people don't understand something, they give it names." "But you didn't heal us with magic," Liam said thoughtfully. "You just loved us." Naomi smiled softly. "Exactly, but sometimes love looks like magic to those who have never felt it." The boys seemed satisfied, but Naomi's heart was heavy, because deep down she knew love alone couldn't explain everything. She still didn't understand how her touch, her belief, had awakened sight in eyes declared hopeless. And the world's hunger for answers was growing too loud to ignore. The breaking point came in autumn. Charles received another letter, this one not from a crest of old allies but from a faceless sender. The words chilled him to the bone. We know about Naomi, we know about the twins. If you do not cooperate, we will take what you value most. No signature, no demands of money, only a threat. That night, Charles summoned Naomi into his study. He handed her the letter without speaking. Her hands shook as she read it. They're coming for the boys. No, Charles said firmly, they're coming for you, and through you they'll use the boys. Naomi's knees nearly buckled. The world outside was not just curious, it was dangerous. What do we do? She whispered. Charles's jaw set. We prepare, we fight, and if it comes to it, we run. Naomi wanted to believe him, but that night, as she watched Elias and Liam sleep peacefully, she felt the shadows pressing closer. For the first time since their miracle began, she wondered if love would be enough to protect them. And as the wind howled outside the windows, Naomi knew. The Montgomery story was far from over. In fact, it had only just begun again. The weeks after the anonymous threat felt like walking on glass. Charles doubled the security around the Montgomery estate, filling it with guards who prowled the grounds day and night. Motion sensors lined the fences, cameras blinked red from the corners of the house, and an armored SUV now carried the twins to their private tutors in the city. But Naomi knew what Charles did not say aloud. No wall was tall enough, no lock heavy enough, no guard loyal enough when shadows decided to slip inside. The boys noticed too. Why can't we go into town anymore? Elias asked one morning, pressing his nose to the window. The other children at school get to walk outside. Naomi crouched beside him, brushing a curl from his forehead. It's just not safe right now. Because of you, Liam asked bluntly. The words hit Naomi like a stone. She tried to keep her voice calm. Because of people who don't understand, that's all. Liam's gaze, sharper than his brother, lingered on her face. He didn't believe her. The pressure outside the gates swelled each day. Reporters camped on the road beyond the estate, flashing cameras whenever the SUV rolled out. Articles filled the internet. Naomi Caldwell, miracle worker or hoax? Montgomery twins see again. Science demands answers. Is love the new medicine? Some painted Naomi as a saint, others called her a fraud, and a few darker corners of the press insisted she was dangerous, dabbling in forces not meant for human hands. Charles tried to shield her, but even he could not silence the storm. This can't last, Naomi whispered one night as she watched the glowing headlines on her phone. Sooner or later, they'll break through. Charles, standing behind her, set a hand on her shoulder. Let them come, they'll find out this family doesn't bow. But Naomi wasn't sure. The first breach came quietly. One evening, as Naomi walked the twins through their bedtime routine, she noticed something strange on the second-floor landing, a small red dot sliding across the wall. It moved too smoothly to be a trick of light. Her breath froze. Boys, she said softly, forcing calm into her tone, let's go back inside the room. Elias tilted his head. What is it? Nothing, Naomi lied, ushering them in. She pulled the curtains shut, her pulse hammering. She had seen enough movies to know the truth, a laser sight. Later she told Charles, his face turned gray, then stone-hard. Snipers, he muttered, testing our defenses. Naomi's hands shook. What if the boys had? They didn't, Charles cut in, though his voice cracked. And they won't, I'll see to it. Security doubled again, but fear had already seeped into the children's lives. Elias began waking from nightmares, crying that shadows were reaching for him. Liam grew quiet, watchful, no longer trusting the safety of his own home. Naomi felt helpless. All she could offer were arms that held, whispers that soothed. But in the back of her mind, she asked the question she had buried for months. Why me? Why had her presence healed what doctors declared impossible? Why did her touch, her love, bring back sight? And if she truly carried something rare, something beyond understanding, was she a blessing or a curse? The attack came sooner than anyone expected. It was a gray morning in November, the kind that carried no promise of warmth. Naomi had taken the boys into the library for lessons. Their tutor, a gentle old man named Mr. Harper, was guiding them through maps of Europe when the power cut out. The lights died, the house fell silent. Stay here, Naomi told the boys quickly. She hurried to the hall where guards were already shouting into radios. Backup generators are down, one barked. This isn't a simple outage. Then the first window shattered. A smoke canister rolled across the marble floor, spilling thick white fog. Naomi's lungs burned as she stumbled back into the library, slamming the door shut. The twins clung to her, coughing. Mr. Harper looked pale, useless. From beyond the door came the sound of boots, heavy, purposeful. "Naomi Caldwell," a voice bellowed through the smoke, male, hard, with a trace of foreign steel. "Come with us and no one will be harmed." Naomi's stomach dropped. They weren't here for Charles, not for money, not even for the boys. They were here for her. Her heart raced, but she forced her voice steady. "Stay behind me," she told the twins. The door rattled, then cracked as something slammed against it. Once, twice, then it burst open. 3 figures in black tactical gear stormed in, masks covering their faces, rifles slung across their backs. Naomi's body moved before her mind could. She spread her arms wide, shielding Elias and Liam. "You'll have to go through me," she said fiercely. The leader tilted his head, amused. "That is the plan." He stepped forward, reaching for her. Then, "Enough," Charles's voice thundered through the smoke. From the doorway opposite, Charles appeared with 2 guards at his side, shotguns raised. His eyes, usually cold with restraint, blazed with fury. "Touch her and you'll never leave this estate alive." The intruders hesitated. The standoff crackled with tension. For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. Then the leader gave a sharp whistle. The intruders threw down another smoke canister, blinding the room again. When it cleared, they were gone. But they had left something behind. A single black card on the library floor, embossed with a silver emblem Naomi had never seen. Charles picked it up, his jaw tight. "What is it?" Naomi asked, coughing. His fingers curled around the card as if it burned him. "An organization I hoped was long dead." "What do they want with me?" Charles met her gaze, haunted. "Not just you, what lives inside you, and they won't stop until they have it." Naomi shivered, pulling the trembling twins close. For the first time, she realized this was bigger than all of them, bigger than love, bigger than miracles. This was war. The Montgomery estate no longer felt like home. Every creak of the floorboards, every flicker of the security cameras, every rustle of wind outside the windows set Naomi on edge. The attack had shaken not just the walls of the mansion, but the fragile sense of safety within them. The twins were the most affected. Elias refused to sleep without the light on, whimpering if Naomi left the room for more than a few minutes. Liam grew silent, suspicious of everyone, even the guards. "They'll come back," he whispered one night, clutching Naomi's hand. "They didn't get what they wanted." Naomi smoothed his hair, forcing a smile she didn't feel. "We won't let them, you're safe here." But in her heart she wasn't sure. The black card haunted her. Sometimes she pulled it from the drawer in her nightstand, staring at the silver emblem pressed into the surface. It was strange, almost abstract, 2 serpents coiled around a single eye. Something about it made her skin crawl. She asked Charles about it again and again, but each time he shut down. "Not now. It's complicated. Let me handle this." But Naomi wasn't a woman who could live in the dark. One night when the house was quiet, she found Charles in the study, staring at the card with a glass of bourbon in his hand. His shoulders sagged, his face tired. "Tell me," she said softly, "please, I need to know what we're up against." Charles's eyes lifted to hers. For once, the mask of control slipped and she saw fear beneath. "They call themselves the Serpent Order," he began slowly. "Old money, older power. A society that has existed for centuries, feeding on influence, knowledge, and anything the world can't explain." Naomi's breath hitched. "And you know them?" Charles nodded grimly. "My father did, and his father before him. The Montgomery family has always had ties to them, not willingly, more like chains we could never break. They deal in secrets, Naomi, secrets like yours." Her stomach twisted. "Secrets like mine, you think I'm part of whatever they're after." "You don't understand," Charles said, leaning forward. "The Order doesn't care who you are, they only care what you can do. To them, you're not Naomi Caldwell, you're a weapon, a tool, and they've wanted you from the moment the twins opened their eyes." Naomi's heart pounded. "Then why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because I prayed they wouldn't find you," Charles admitted, his voice breaking. But the miracle was too loud, too public, you drew them like fire in the night. Naomi staggered back, the weight of his words crushing her. All this time she had thought the danger came from opportunists, desperate parents, greedy doctors, curious scientists. She hadn't imagined something older, darker, something that stretched its hands through generations. You knew this day would come, she whispered. Charles closed his eyes. Yes. And you still let me stay. You saved my sons, he said fiercely. How could I send you away? How could I not fight for you after what you've given them? Tears pricked Naomi's eyes, but she turned away. Gratitude was one thing, chains of fate were another. The days that followed were thick with tension. Guards patrolled the halls, but Naomi felt no safer. She saw the serpent's emblem everywhere, in the curve of wrought iron gates, in the twist of garden vines, in the swirl of her tea. And she began to wonder, had they chosen her long before she chose the Montgomerys? One morning, as she sat in the garden with the twins, Elias tugged on her sleeve. Naomi, he said quietly, do you ever hear them? Her brow furrowed. Hear who? The voices, Elias whispered. His eyes, still carrying a faint cloudiness from the years of blindness, glimmered strangely. They come at night, they call your name. Naomi's blood ran cold. Voices. Liam looked up from his book, his expression grim. I hear them too, they tell us you don't belong here. Naomi's breath caught. She pulled them both close, heart racing. If the Order had found ways to reach the boys' dreams, then walls and guards meant nothing. That evening, Naomi confronted Charles again. They're in the boys' heads, she snapped, packing the study. This isn't just about threats and smoke bombs, they're reaching into our home, into their minds. Charles's face darkened. I feared this. Feared what? Naomi demanded. The Order doesn't always use guns and blades, Charles said grimly. They use whispers, they know how to plant seeds in young minds, bend them before they've even grown strong. Naomi's knees weakened. You mean they're trying to take Elias and Liam? They'll try to make them doubt you, Charles said, his fists clenching, to turn them against you, and if that fails, they'll take them by force. Naomi felt as if the floor had vanished beneath her feet. That night, Naomi couldn't sleep. She walked the halls of the estate, her bare feet silent on the cold marble, her thoughts spiraled. What if she had never come here? Would the twins have remained blind but safe? Had her love healed them only to paint targets on their backs? And what if the voices were right? What if she didn't belong here? What if she was never meant to stay? As she turned a corner, she froze. At the end of the hall, half hidden by shadow, stood Elias. His small frame was still, his face unreadable. Elias, Naomi whispered, why are you awake? The boy tilted his head. They told me you would leave us. Naomi's chest tightened. Who told you that? The ones in the dark, Elias said simply. His voice was flat, too flat for a child. They said you don't belong to us, you belong to them. Naomi's breath trembled. She stepped closer, but Elias stepped back, his eyes glimmering in the dim light. You'll go, he whispered, and when you do, we'll see the truth. Before Naomi could answer, Liam appeared behind his brother, his hand gripping Elias' arm. Don't listen to them, Liam hissed, his eyes locked on Naomi. Don't let them win. Elias blinked, his expression softening as if waking from a trance. Naomi rushed forward, pulling both boys into her arms, tears streaming down her face. But even as she held them, she knew the Order was already inside their walls. The next morning, Charles made a decision. We can't stay here, he said bluntly over breakfast. The estate isn't safe anymore, they know too much, they've already breached once, if they strike again it will be worse. Naomi's fork clattered against her plate. Where do you expect us to go? We can't hide from an organization that's everywhere. Charles's jaw tightened. No, but we can buy time, and I know a place they won't expect. Naomi stared at him. Where? Charles hesitated, then answered, my father's old refuge, deep in the Adirondacks. Off-grid, no signals, no roads. If the Order wants us, they'll have to dig us out of the mountain itself. Naomi glanced at the twins, who sat quietly listening. She wanted to believe in Charles's plan, to believe in any plan, but the emblem burned in her mind. 2 serpents, 1 eye, endless hunger. Could any mountain keep them safe? As the first snow began to fall outside the window, Naomi knew the war was only beginning. And the Order was already watching. Snow fell in soft veils across the Montgomery estate the morning they left. The grounds, usually alive with guards and gardeners, were eerily still. Charles had dismissed most of the staff overnight, keeping only a skeleton crew of men he trusted with his life. Vehicles were lined up in the courtyard, 2 SUVs and a nondescript delivery truck. Everything had been packed hastily: food, supplies, medical kits, enough to survive off-grid for months. Naomi stood by the SUV, holding Elias and Liam close. The twins were bundled in thick coats, their faces pale. Neither spoke much. Since the night of Elias' strange trance, they had been unusually quiet, as if carrying secrets too heavy for their young shoulders. Charles moved with grim efficiency, issuing orders to the guards. "No phones, no radios, we travel blind. If the order has tapped into our signals, we'll only be leading them straight to us." Naomi frowned. What if they're already watching? Charles's jaw tightened. "Then we move faster." The convoy rolled out at dawn. Snow muffled the world, turning highways into long, white corridors. Naomi sat in the backseat with the twins, her eyes flicking constantly to the windows, searching the passing cars. Every dark sedan felt like a threat. Every truck in the distance looked like a shadow waiting to close in. Liam leaned against her shoulder. "Are we running away forever?" he asked softly. Naomi kissed his hair. "No, sweetheart, we're just finding a safe place, somewhere quiet where no one can hurt us." Elias looked up at her, his cloudy gaze sharper than usual. "But they'll follow, they always follow." Naomi's heart twisted. She couldn't lie, not when the boy's words carried the weight of something more than childish fear. By midday, they had left the city far behind. The convoy cut north, weaving through back roads, avoiding main highways. At every gas stop, Charles changed vehicles with his guards, switching plates, trying to confuse any possible tail. But Naomi couldn't shake the feeling of eyes on them. At one station, as Charles paid in cash inside, Naomi caught sight of a man standing across the lot. Tall, draped in a heavy coat, his face shadowed by a hood. He wasn't pumping gas, wasn't walking anywhere. He was simply standing still, his head tilted toward their SUV. Naomi's chest tightened. When she blinked, he was gone. The snow thickened as they drove deeper into the mountains. The road grew narrow, hemmed in by towering pines heavy with frost. The silence was almost oppressive, broken only by the crunch of tires on snow and the low hum of the engine. Inside the car, the boys finally spoke again. "Naomi," Elias whispered, "I heard them last night." Her heart leapt. "Who?" "The voices," he said softly. "They told me the mountains won't save us. They said you belong to them." Liam scowled, fists clenched. "Don't listen to them, they lie, they're trying to trick us." Naomi tightened her grip on their hands. "You're right, Liam, they lie, and as long as I'm here, they can't take you." But deep down, she wondered, what if the order didn't need to take them physically? What if they were already inside their dreams, their thoughts, their blood? By late afternoon, the convoy reached the last stretch of road, a winding path that led into the Adirondacks, climbing higher and higher into the wilderness. Charles drove now, his face grim, his knuckles white on the wheel. "We're close, another hour and we'll reach the refuge." Naomi glanced behind them. The second SUV followed, guards alert, scanning the tree line. The delivery truck lagged slightly, carrying supplies. All seemed well. Until it was. From the rear window, Naomi saw it, headlights in the distance. Too far to identify, but too steady to dismiss. The same car, keeping pace no matter how the convoy turned. "Charles," she whispered, panic rising, "we're being followed." Charles checked the mirror, his face hardened. "I see it." He pressed the accelerator. The SUV roared up the incline, snow spraying behind them. The second vehicle matched speed, closing ranks. The car behind sped up too. The chase was silent at first, broken only by the wind and the groan of tires against snow. But Naomi could feel the intent, sharp and heavy, pressing in from the distance. Then the headlights drew closer. "Too close." "Hold on," Charles barked, jerking the wheel. The SUV swerved around a sharp curve, nearly skidding. Naomi clutched the twins against her, her heart hammering. The car behind followed effortlessly. "Who are they?" Naomi cried. Charles's voice was steel. "The order." Gunfire cracked through the night. Naomi screamed as bullets shattered the rear window, spraying glass across the seats. The twins ducked, crying out. Charles cursed, swerving wildly to avoid the shots. The guards in the second SUV responded, their rifles flashing from the windows. The sound of return fire echoed through the mountains, deafening in the stillness. "Stay down," Charles shouted. Naomi threw herself over the twins, shielding them with her body. Her mind raced, heart pounding. "They won't stop. They'll kill us to have me." A sharp screech split the air. The delivery truck behind them skidded, bullets tearing through its tires. It careened off the road, slamming into the trees. Flames burst into the snowy air. Naomi's stomach lurched. Supplies gone, men gone, just like that. The chase tore on, mile after mile of frozen road. The Order's car pressed closer, relentless. More gunfire cracked, more glass shattered. Naomi could hear Elias sobbing beneath her, Liam whispering over and over, "Don't let them win." Finally, Charles veered sharply off the main road, plunging onto a barely visible trail into the woods. The SUV jolted violently, branches slashing the windows. Snow blinded the windshield. The headlights behind followed for a moment, then vanished. Charles didn't slow until they reached a clearing. He killed the engine, chest heaving. For a long moment there was only silence. Then Elias whispered, trembling, "They'll find us, they always find us." Naomi pulled him close, tears streaming down her face. "Not while I'm here, not while I breathe." But even as she spoke, her gaze drifted to the tree line. And there, in the shadows between the pines, she thought she saw them again, two serpents, coiled around a single eye, watching. The walls were white, not the kind of white that made you feel calm, but the kind that reminded Naomi of hospital beds and empty hallways where no one came to help. She sat on a narrow cot, knees pulled up to her chest, her baggy dress wrinkled from being dragged through the facility. The room was windowless, with only a slit of light shining from above. A small camera sat in the corner, blinking every few seconds like a watchful eye. Her heart beat in quick bursts. She whispered to herself the same thing over and over, "Charles will come, Eloin will be safe, Charles will come." But when the heavy steel door opened with a hiss, it was Charles. It was a man in a white coat holding a clipboard. "Naomi Kingsley," he said in a flat voice, "your body reacts differently than most. We just want to study you, it won't hurt." Naomi hugged her knees tighter. "I want my friend." "You'll see her," the man replied, not unkindly but without emotion. He gestured to two guards behind him. "Take her to Lab 3. Naomi struggled as the guards reached for her, her voice breaking into sobs. "I don't want to go, let me out, please." Her small fists hit their arms, but it was like striking stone. The man didn't flinch, he only made a note on his clipboard. "Fear responses are strong, noted." Meanwhile, Eloin sat in a separate room, staring at her hands. Her eyes darted to the mirrored wall. She knew someone was behind it. She signed furiously, "Where's Naomi? Where's my father?" No one answered. Her chest tightened. She thought of her mother, gone for years, and now her father missing. The last person she had was Naomi, and they had taken her away. For the first time since she had been born, silence felt like a punishment instead of peace. Then she remembered something Naomi had once whispered to her. "When you're scared, make noise, even if you think no one hears it." Eloin took a deep breath and screamed. The sound cracked in her throat, harsh and raw. For someone who rarely spoke, the sound was more jarring than the alarm that followed. Miles away, Charles was inside the hidden SUV, his hands clenching the steering wheel as Leon guided him through the facility's blueprints on a tablet. "They're underground," Leon explained, pointing at the glowing map. "Main floor is a distraction. Naomi and Eloin are most likely here in the containment sector. Security rotates every 6 minutes, that's our window." Charles's jaw tightened. 6 minutes is enough. Leon looked at him. "This isn't a boardroom, Charles. These people don't play fair. If we go in, we may not come back out." Charles finally met his eyes. "Then we'll make sure the girls do." Back in the facility, Naomi sat in a reclining chair, straps tightening across her wrists and ankles. A machine hummed beside her, its screen lighting up with shifting graphs. The man in the lab coat adjusted his glasses. "We believe your body produces an unusual electrical current when exposed to stress. If we can harness it, imagine the possibilities." Naomi's lips trembled. "I don't want to be a possibility." But her fear spiked when they placed cold sensors against her temples. The screen jumped with waves of color and the man smiled faintly. Incredible, he murmured, even stronger than projected. Tears slid down Naomi's face. Charles will come for me. The man's smile thinned. I wouldn't count on it. In the shadows of the outer wall, Charles crouched with Leon dressed in black gear. The night air was sharp, the silence broken only by the rustle of leaves. Leon checked his watch. 2 minutes till rotation. We move fast, we move quiet. Charles nodded, but his mind was already ahead, inside in the hallways, in the cold rooms where Naomi and Aloan waited. When the guards switched positions, Leon whispered, now. They slipped through a side grate, the metal barely groaning as they lifted it. The narrow passage smelled of rust and dampness, but Charles moved with purpose, crawling forward, every muscle tight with focus. Naomi's screams echoed through the sterile lab. The man watched the readings climb higher, fascinated. Fear amplifies it, he said, writing quickly. Perhaps pain would amplify it further. He reached for a small device, a thin needle gleaming at its tip. Naomi's breath hitched. No, she begged, please don't. The door burst open, a guard stumbled in, panting. The perimeter been breached, 2 men inside. The scientist froze, his eyes flicked to Naomi, then to the monitor. Secure her, move her to chamber 4, now. Naomi's heart soared for the first time that night. Someone had come. Charles. Charles and Leon reached the first checkpoint, a pair of guards slumped unconscious at their feet. Leon quickly hacked the security panel while Charles dragged the bodies out of sight. Hurry, Charles urged. The door clicked open. Inside was a hallway lined with mirrors. Behind them, faint movements flickered, people watching. Charles ignored the chill crawling up his neck. He focused on the faint sound at the end of the corridor. A scream, high-pitched, desperate. Naomi. He didn't think, he ran. In chamber 4, Naomi was shoved into a glass enclosure, her palms slapping against the transparent walls. Let me out, she cried. Through the blur of her tears, she saw figures in the corridor. One of them moved faster than the rest, his shoulders broad, his steps unyielding. Charles, she screamed. Charles sprinted toward her, his eyes burning with relief and fury all at once. Naomi. But just as he reached the door to her chamber, steel shutters slammed down between them with a deafening clang. Charles crashed his fists against the barrier. Naomi pressed her hands on the other side, sobbing. They won't stop me, Charles vowed, his voice raw. I'm taking you home. And for the first time, Naomi believed him. Charles's fists hammered against the steel shutter until his knuckles split. Naomi pressed her tiny hands against the glass, her eyes streaming with tears. They were only inches apart but felt worlds away. Hold on, Charles shouted, his voice straining. I'll get you out. Naomi shook her head in panic. They'll take me again. No one's taking you anywhere, Charles promised, his eyes locked with hers. Not while I breathe. Leon's voice crackled through the earpiece. Charles, they're activating lockdown protocols. You've got less than 10 minutes before the whole sector seals. Then I need this door open now, Charles roared. Leon's fingers flew across his tablet. Sparks burst from the panel near the shutter, working on it. Meanwhile, in her own room across the facility, Aloan pressed her ear to the wall. She couldn't hear the alarms, but she could feel the vibration of boots pounding down corridors. Fear gnawed at her, but she forced herself to focus. Naomi needed her, her father needed her. She glanced at the camera in the corner. Her fingers moved in sharp, deliberate signs. You're watching, aren't you? You think you're in control, but you're wrong. Then, with a sudden burst of courage, she grabbed the heavy chair in the room and hurled it at the mirrored wall. Glass spiderwebbed across the surface. A faint cheer of defiance escaped her throat as she lifted the chair again. This time the mirror shattered. And Aloan climbed through the jagged frame, ignoring the cuts on her hands. Back at Naomi's chamber, the shutter screeched and jerked upward, opening just enough for Charles to force his way through. He ran to her, dropping to his knees. His arms wrapped around her so tightly she thought she might break, but she didn't care. For the first time all night, she felt safe. I've got you, Charles whispered. His voice trembled not from weakness but from the sheer force of love. The scientist appeared in the doorway, flanked by 2 guards. His expression was cold, clinical. Impressive, he said, but you're too late. The data's already been collected. The girl is ours. Charles stood pulling Naomi behind him. She belongs to no one. The guards raised their weapons. In that instant, Naomi felt something inside her snap, not from fear but from fury. The same strange pulse that had lit the monitors earlier surged through her body. The glass walls hummed, the lights flickered. A blast of static erupted from the overhead speakers, making the guards stumble. Sparks rained from the ceiling. The scientist's eyes widened. She's doing it again. Charles didn't wait. He lunged, slamming into the nearest guard, his fist colliding with bone. Naomi ducked under the chaos, clutching the edge of Charles's coat. The scientist backed away, muttering to himself, "Remarkable, limitless potential," then he vanished into the shadows as Charles fought. Aloan crept through a dim corridor, blood dripping from her scraped palms. She spotted two guards ahead and froze. She had no weapon, no way to fight, but then she remembered Naomi's words, "Make noise even if you think no one hears." She picked up a loose pipe from the floor and hurled it down the opposite hallway. It clanged loudly, echoing through the vents. The guards turned and ran after the sound. Heart hammering, Aloan darted past them, her feet slapping against the cold tiles. For the first time, she wasn't just surviving, she was fighting back. Charles's breath came in ragged bursts as the last guard collapsed unconscious at his feet. Blood trickled from a cut above his eyebrow, but he didn't slow down. He grabbed Naomi's hand. "We have to find Aloan." "She's here," Naomi gasped. "I know she is." "Then we move, stay close." They ran down the corridor, alarms screaming overhead. Naomi's legs burned, but she didn't let go of his hand. Suddenly, from the far end of the hall, a small figure appeared, limping, hands streaked with blood but her eyes blazing with determination. "Aloan," Naomi cried. The twins crashed into each other, hugging so tightly it hurt. Charles's chest heaved with relief at the sight. But the reunion was cut short when the floor trembled beneath them. A deep, mechanical voice boomed through the speakers. "Containment breach, engage fail-safe." Steel doors slammed down across the corridors, one after another. Leon's voice came through Charles's earpiece, frantic. "They're sealing the sector, you've got 90 seconds before you're trapped inside." Charles scanned the hall. The only path still open was down, a stairwell leading into the lower levels. "Dad," Aloan signed desperately. Charles hesitated. Going deeper was a gamble, but staying meant death. He grabbed both girls' hands. "Trust me," he said. And together they plunged into the dark stairwell. The lower level was colder, quieter, the air heavy with the hum of machines. Rows of glass tanks lined the walls, filled with faintly glowing liquid. Strange shapes floated inside, animals, organs, things Naomi didn't have names for. She pressed closer to Charles, trembling. "What is this place?" Charles's face hardened. "A graveyard of experiments." A voice echoed from the shadows. "Not a graveyard," the scientist corrected, stepping into the light. His glasses reflected the glow of the tanks. "A birthplace, and thanks to Naomi, it's only the beginning." Behind him, more guards appeared, weapons raised. Charles pushed the girls behind him. His heart pounded, but his eyes never wavered. "You'll have to go through me first." The scientist smirked. That was always the plan. The alarms howled louder, red lights bathing the chamber in a bloody glow. Naomi squeezed Aloan's hand, her chest tight with terror. Yet something new stirred inside her, a spark that wasn't fear but defiance. Charles squared his shoulders, preparing for the fight of his life. And as the guards closed in, Naomi whispered to herself the same words Charles had promised her. "They won't stop us, not while we breathe." The red glow of alarms pulsed through the underground chamber, bathing everything in shadows and blood-colored light. Naomi clung to Aloan, her chest rising and falling in quick bursts while Charles stepped forward to shield them. Rows of glass tanks glimmered around them, strange shapes floating inside. The smell of chemicals filled the air, sharp and bitter. The scientist's voice rang out, calm even as chaos raged overhead. "You've come a long way, Mr. Kingsley, but this ends here. Naomi isn't just a girl, she's a key, and keys unlock doors you can't imagine." Charles's fists clenched. "She's a child and she's mine to protect." The scientist's smirk widened. "Protect her from herself." He snapped his fingers. The guards raised their weapons, laser sights cutting red lines through the misty air. Naomi whimpered, clutching Aloan's hand. Her body trembled, but inside her chest that strange pulse began to beat again, stronger than before. Charles's eyes softened for only a second as he glanced at the girls. "Stay behind me." Then he moved. The first guard lunged, but Charles met him head-on, his elbow smashing into the man's jaw. The sound cracked through the chamber. Another swung a baton, but Charles ducked, driving his shoulder into the man's chest. Two more advanced, guns raised. "Get down," Charles shouted. The twins dropped, covering their heads. Charles grabbed the nearest tank lid and yanked it open, spilling glowing liquid across the floor. The guards slipped, weapons clattering to the tiles. Charles used the moment, slamming one into the other before wrenching the gun free. But there were too many. For every guard that fell, another stepped forward. The scientist simply watched, scribbling notes on his clipboard like Charles's fury was just another experiment. Naomi's breathing grew ragged, her skin prickled, her hair lifting as though charged with static. Aloan felt it too, gripping Naomi's hand tighter, her wide eyes darting between her sister and her father. "Naomi," she signed with trembling fingers, "you can do this." Naomi shook her head. "I don't know how." "You already are," Aloan signed back. As if in answer, the lights above flickered wildly. A deep hum filled the room, vibrating through the walls, the tanks, even the bones in their bodies. The guards hesitated, glancing around nervously. The scientist leaned forward eagerly. "Yes, yes, push further." But Naomi wasn't doing it for him. She was doing it for Charles. For Aloan. For herself. A burst of white-hot energy exploded outward from Naomi, rattling the glass tanks until cracks spiderwebbed across their surfaces. Alarms shrieked even louder, sparks cascaded from the ceiling. One by one, the tanks shattered. Liquid poured across the floor, flooding the chamber. The strange shapes inside, half-formed, grotesque, slumped lifeless into the glowing water. The guards panicked. One dropped his weapon, another slipped and fell into the liquid. The rest stumbled back, shielding their faces from the surge of light. Charles turned to Naomi, his eyes wide. "Sweetheart." But Naomi only shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I can't stop it." Aloan wrapped both arms around her. "Then don't stop, aim it." Naomi closed her eyes, focusing on the image of Charles standing tall, refusing to give up. She focused on Aloan's hands squeezing hers, grounding her. And then she let go. The blast ripped through the chamber, a wave of pure energy that shattered the steel doors, knocked weapons from the guards' hands, and sent the scientist's clipboard flying. When the light dimmed, silence fell, smoke hung in the air. Charles staggered forward, his body aching from the shockwave but alive. The guards were down, groaning or unconscious. The scientist knelt in the corner, clutching his burned hand, his glasses cracked. Naomi collapsed into Aloan's arms, trembling. "You did it," Aloan whispered, stroking her sister's hair. "You saved us." Charles reached them, kneeling down, pulling both girls into his arms. For a long moment, none of them spoke. They just held onto each other, their hearts beating in unison. Finally, Charles stood, lifting Naomi into his arms while Aloan clung to his side. He looked toward the ruined doorway, smoke still curling from its edges. "We're going home." But the scientist's voice rose again, hoarse and desperate. "You think you've won? You don't understand. Naomi isn't just a child. She's a weapon, one the world will come for again and again." Charles turned, his jaw set. "Then I'll spend the rest of my life making sure they never touch her again." With that, he led the girls out, leaving the scientist in the wreckage of his own obsession. The night air hit them like a blessing. Charles carried Naomi through the broken exit, Aloan close beside him. Leon was waiting in the SUV, eyes widening as he saw their condition. "Get in," he shouted. They piled inside, Charles barking, "Drive." The tires screeched, gravel flying as the vehicle tore down the dark road. Behind them, the facility burned, red against the horizon. Naomi stirred weakly in Charles's arms, her small voice trembling. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone." Charles kissed the top of her head. "You didn't, you saved us." Aloan leaned against his shoulder, exhausted but smiling faintly. "We did it together." Charles looked at both girls, his chest tightening with fierce pride. "Together," he agreed. Hours later, the SUV pulled into the Kingsley estate. For the first time in days, the gates closed behind them, locking the world out. Inside the mansion, Charles laid Naomi gently on the couch. Eloin sat beside her, refusing to let go of her hand. Charles stood back, watching them. His body was battered, his mind heavy, but his heart had never been clearer. They weren't just survivors, they were family. And nothing, no scientist, no government, no hidden enemy would ever take that from him. Far away in the smoking ruins of the facility, the scientist sat in the rubble, cradling his burned hand. A faint smile twisted across his broken face. "She's stronger than we thought," he whispered to himself.